be on his phone?
What's that? The City of Grand Forks, the proud home of the University of North Dakota City Council meeting Monday, June 15, 2020 is hereby called to order. Welcome and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Dockler. Dockler. Can you hear me, Katie? I see you.
Sign language.
Yes, yes, Dockler's present. Weber.
Here.
Mock. Here. Marshall. Sandy, can you hear me? I'm going to go to the podium.
Nobody can hear.
Marshall? Sandy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, President Sandy?
Here.
And Veen? All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Maureen. So 1.2 Mayor's announcements. I want to say welcome and good evening. I'm so proud to recognize that 2 local public health employees are being recognized for the important work they have done for Grand Forks County and beyond. Public Health Director Debbie Swanson has been awarded the North Dakota Public Health Association's Public Health Outstanding Service Award. And this award honors individuals who have exhibited continued excellence in the field of public health. And Michael Dulitz has been awarded the North Dakota Public Health Association's Public Health Worker of the Year Award. The award recognizes a North Dakota Public Health Association member who has made a significant contribution in the field of public health in the last year. We're so proud of and moreover so grateful for what you do for our community. Let's give them a round. So thank you. And next, our community has been through a lot these last few months, as has our nation and world. When it feels like the winds are pushing and pulling you in every direction, as they quite literally have these past few days, it's helpful to recall and reaffirm some of your anchoring principles and values. People want to know where we stand. As part of my comments tonight, I want to reaffirm 2 anchoring principles of our community, as expressed through City Council resolution and mayoral proclamation. First, the week of May 10th through the 16th, in conjunction with the federal government and communities across the nation, Grand Forks proclaimed May 10th through 16th as National Police Week. On that day, we also proclaimed May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day. It was with bitter and remorseful irony that the following week, our community, our police department family, and the family members of Grand Forks Police Officer Cody Holte were forced to face the tragic reality and meaning of that proclamation. We could not have been more heartbroken as a community on May 27th. I'm proud of our police and the law enforcement family on how they responded. And I'm also proud of how the community has come forward in support for the family and our department in so many heartwarming ways. Grand Forks and the surrounding region demonstrated they were firmly behind the family and our police. And so to reaffirm our commitment from May Police Week resolution, I'll read some points. Proclamation November, our National Police Week, May 10th through 16th, and Peace Officers Memorial Day, May 15th. The members of the Grand Forks Police Department and area law enforcement play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of our community. It is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of the law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. Now, Michael Brown, Mayor of Grand Forks, North Dakota, call upon all citizens to join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present, who by their faithful and devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in so doing have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation of preserving the rights and securities of all of our citizens. I further call upon all citizens of Grand Forks to observe May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who have, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, or have become disabled in the performance of their duties. Let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. A second reaffirmation is our inclusive and welcoming community. In the recent past, our community has also reeled from national and local events that affronted our values of inclusion and respect and dignity for all lawful community members. In one specific response, local community members organized a protest against the killing of George Floyd and against the racist system. I am proud that not only could our citizens express their First Amendment rights, but that it was done in a coordination and a consultation with our city and law enforcement. I would like to recognize the organizers and also Council Member Katie Dockler for both having the courage to protest and the courage to do so peacefully so the message rung clear. Members of our community, no matter their background, need to know that their voice, their contribution, and their very being here make us who we are. We must be vocal allies for all of our members, and we must act so that our commitment can be seen, heard, and felt by all those diverse members of our community, so there can be healing and authentic presence of justice and a regained and reinforced sense of community. Just so we are clear where we stand as a city and a community, here is reaffirmation of our Inclusion and Welcoming Community Resolution from December 2018. A resolution supporting an inclusion and welcoming community. The city and residents of Grand Forks established that the city is an inclusive community that welcomes the positive and lawful contributions of community members. We uphold the fundamental rights and principles upon which the United States of America was founded, establishing the equality, respect, and dignity of all people, regardless of background. We pledge to stand against hate and discrimination and steadfastly affirm our dedication to the inalienable right of everyone to live without fear and intimidation. We condemn harassment, assault, or intimidation based on diversity. Now therefore, Michael Brown, Mayor of Grand Forks, and the City Council, who are democratically elected representatives, confirms its dedication to support the rights and dignity of all members of the community and to condemn acts of hate, violence, or discrimination. With both these city and community values commitment to our police members and to our welcoming community, we commit our actions that will meet our words. And this is a interesting moment in history. Reminds me of my first city council meeting when Mike Yavaro was present with a member who was moving his house, and Mike Yavaro had advised the person what to do, and it was wrong. And so the citizen was here to complain, and I said to Mr. Yavaro, "Did you tell him that?" And he said, "Yes, Mayor, I did." And I knew then I could work with people who are honest and serving the community. And it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you for these 20 years. So thank you. And next we go to item 2, awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations, 2.1.
Mayor, if I could also just let the record reflect that Convene is attendance of the meeting.
Okay.
And 2.1 is COVID-19 update, public health, and economic response briefing.
Director Swanson.
Good evening, Mayor Brown and members of the City Council. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for you this evening, but I did want to provide a few little updates that are new since the last time I spoke with the Council on June 1st. Our total cases in North Dakota are just over 3,000 at 3,101, with 35 people hospitalized and 74 deaths across North Dakota. In Grand Forks County, there are 345 cases. We completed 6,966 total tests. That's across all systems, with 325 people recovered and 4 deaths in Grand Forks County. All of this information is available and readily available on the ndhealth.gov website. What we have seen in the past few weeks has been between 0 and 2 cases daily, most days of the past couple of weeks, and they've been primarily in congregate settings, but we've also seen them in some workplaces and others as well. As a health department, we're committed to diagnostic testing, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine, and those remain our best tools for containment of the disease and mitigation. We also want to reiterate the importance of social distancing and the wearing of face coverings or masks when out in public, especially in closed environments or places where people cannot be 6 feet apart. It's still recommended for all settings, even though we are starting to see some declining numbers in terms of new active cases. With the increased large activities and travel that's occurring, it might lead to greater community spread or travel-related cases, so we want to be ever vigilant for that, because we now know, as supported by a number of studies in the CDC, up to 40% of our spread can be from people who are what we call asymptomatic, without symptoms, or pre-symptoms those few days before they develop symptoms of the disease. Outdoor activities might be helping somewhat to prevent the spread. We know with flu, we tend to see cases rise in the wintertime when people are more confined, but we don't know for sure that that's exactly what's leading to it. It's probably also the robust activities that we have had for the last 3 months to keep people from being in large groups and spreading it. As of May 29th, North Dakota is in what we call the green level for restart. We are in low risk, which means there have been some lessening of some of the restrictions that were there in the past. There is one more level, which is blue, which we are not at yet because we are still seeing some activity in North Dakota. I also wanted to just reiterate that we are starting to get information on vaccine development. And what we know is that there's many manufacturers that are taking this risk. It's a financial risk to them. But there is a really important element because not all vaccines will make it to FDA approval and to ultimately into the pipeline. It's important for there to be a lot of research in this area and a lot of manufacturers. So they'll be incentivized to continue to do this research and development. What we've been hearing is that vaccine may be available by late 2020 or early 2021. And it takes a long time to develop a vaccine, and this is really a fast track, but we absolutely have to pay attention to vaccine safety. Vaccination is really the only way to get us to that 60% herd immunity, 60 to 70% herd immunity for this disease. Because it's a novel coronavirus, we really don't have much immunity at all. We're still learning a lot about serology testing and whether or not that will provide us with information as to whether people are immune from the disease. And so we're starting to see some efforts for serology testing to increase at the North Dakota Department of Health and in other locations such as hospitals and clinics. On the Grand Forks County front, our nurses in our jail completed all testing on inmates and the correctional officers there. And as a result of a couple of positive cases, they'll be repeating that testing Thursday and Friday. That's a large population of over 200 people, so it's taken a lot of our resources to respond to that. On the positive front, Altru is loosening some of their visitation restrictions this week, and they have information on their website at altru.org if you are visiting someone in the hospital or anticipating needing to be in the hospital with someone who's having a procedure. They have information there for screening. And then also probably the most long awaited is visitation is returning to long-term care facilities also this week. They're approaching it very cautiously. Testing continues among all individuals that work or live in long-term care facilities. And this is a very welcome new development that people will be able to visit their loved ones in long-term care facilities. So that is the majority of what I wanted to share with you this evening. In future, if requests are made for presentations, I'll be happy to provide more PowerPoints with more data. It was a busy week, so I didn't have a chance to put one together for this evening, but I would be happy to entertain any questions, Mayor Brown, or members of the council, if you have any.
Any questions for Director Swanson? So again, face coverings are important to reduce the asymptomatic spread, and COVID is not flu. It's highly contagious and potentially fatal. So we take this seriously. Thank you. And next, we'd like to hear from Councilman Weber on economic response briefings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The state of North Dakota and the city of Grand Forks have been relatively fortunate to date in their efforts to deal with the COVID-19 crisis, both thanks to the leadership of Governor Burgum and our award-winning Director of Public Health, Debbie Swanson. As we move forward, we must continue to hope for the best and be prepared to take every advantage of the grace we have enjoyed, even as we must continue to prepare for challenging times. It's likely that the nation is not yet finished with its first wave, and many forecasters indicate the high potential for a second and perhaps far more serious second wave. Certainly, we're hoping that thousands of students will be returning to Grand Forks in the fall. We want to provide a safe community for them, and we want to provide for their safety once they arrive. This is a global crisis and must be taken seriously. At the same time, we must not be paralyzed by undue fear. As it is possible to do so, the people of Grand Forks deserve honest assessments of the risks so that we can enjoy our social and economic freedoms. We also deserve reliable information so that we can collectively and responsibly respond to rising infection rates to best protect everyone, and especially our young and old. Grand Forks works best when it works for everyone. In light of all of this, Mayor Brown put together a small advisory group to gather information and brainstorm recommendations. That group has not been making policy. Instead, they have been collecting information and brainstorming recommendations. 2 recommendations to come from that work include, first, a public education program around best practices. Things like wearing a mask and washing our hands are not partisan issues. They are instead necessary steps to keep ourselves and those around us healthy in relation to a number of health concerns, of which COVID-19 is one of many. What I want to focus on tonight is the second and far more encompassing of these efforts, a locally designed and targeted set of smart testing protocols and supportive processes that takes full advantage of local resources tailored to address local conditions. We love Grand Forks for many reasons, and it turns out that during a pandemic, we have additional reasons to appreciate our city. We have a sufficiently large population to deal with a variety of issues. We have a research university with a medical school and corresponding laboratory capacity, which means that we have a high level of brain power unusual for a community of around 60,000. We are big enough to have the necessary resources and small enough to be nimble and responsive to threats. We will take fuller advantage of these assets. Currently, if there is an outbreak at a large facility, there's a tendency to test all of the employees at that facility. This is not necessarily the most cost-effective approach or the best way to deal with the spread of infection. Instead, we need to create the necessary demographic database so that we immediately know who those individuals live and interact with at work, home, and in their day-to-day lives, and focus on testing those individuals, and especially those who might work in other vulnerable places, such as other factories or in nursing homes. Think of it as a sort of proactive approach to contact tracing. Additionally, there are tests, as mentioned by Ms. Swanson, serology tests, that can provide results within an hour rather than having to wait sometimes days for results. When infection rates are low, we need to be appropriately monitoring symptoms and the results from less expensive tests. Then, as indicated, we need a set of locally designed protocols to ramp up targeted testing as necessary. Toward this end, Phil Giese, one of the members of the Mayor's Advisory Group, is convening a closed meeting with the city's major employers tomorrow. In addition to a local restaurant and various real estate holdings in our city, he owns a number of nursing facilities across the Upper Plains. He is someone who is directly involved in keeping abreast of the latest developments, especially in relation to innovative testing. Giese's meeting tomorrow will provide our local employers with an invitation to join a testing network with coordinated testing protocols, a preliminary testing matrix, agreements to share data, and to join in current and future testing costs. The intention is to create a public-private partnership to serve our whole community. Concurrent with Mr. Giese's efforts and consistent with the recommendations of CIDRAP, the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, we are putting together a blue ribbon panel of experts to operate at arm's length from politics in a scientifically informed, objective way to provide recommendations to policymakers and Mr. Giese's industry-specific group. CIDRAP advises that the federal government should create such a panel of experts by July. We have individuals with those necessary areas of expertise in our community, and the group's recommendation is to develop a locally focused group panel, and that there is no need to wait until July. The intention is to bring together biostatisticians, disease immunologists, predictive analytics, public health, data management, and supply management experts. This will provide a scientifically grounded group, small enough to be effective and nimble, aloof from political pressures, and thick-skinned enough to provide clear-eyed recommendations for policymakers and the county public health department. Let me paraphrase a response I received from one of the invited experts. I am very willing to participate in such planning for the greater Grand Forks community. I am a viral immunologist by training and have spent my professional career, 30 plus years, addressing such problems from threats including Zika, dengue, Ebola, and influenza virus outbreaks, monitoring strategic planning, and therapeutics in both human and animal health. I serve as one of 3 PIs for UND's Center for Host Pathogen Interactions, the Executive Director of North Dakota's Center of Research Excellence for Avian Therapeutics for Infectious Disease, and the former chair of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. I have been busy over the past few months serving on similar panels for other entities, consulting for private businesses, and reviewing numerous COVID grant applications for federal and regional agencies, but would be more than willing to provide any insight that I have to Grand Forks' plan. Specifically, let me note, he wrote, I personally think that this kind of planning is best done with moderate-sized groups of professionals with various areas of expertise. I am very familiar with CIDRAP's recommendations and agree that this provides an excellent starting point and roadmap, but also believe that it will need personalization to fit and work in our particular community. It's amazing the talent that we have in our small community. We need to make the best of that talent and those assets. All relevant policy decisions must be openly debated and publicly decided. In the meantime, we need industry-specific solutions informed by good science. That is the kind of work that Mayor Brown's advisory group is engaging. The intention of these projects is to first and foremost serve the public health. Additionally, these proactive, locally directed efforts hold the promise of saving the community money, minimizing public restrictions during good times, provide clear direction when threats are detected, and ultimately provide a clear and locally based direction moving forward. In addition to providing this update on the work of the Mayor's Economic Recovery Advisory Group, I also wanted to provide this background for council members for our upcoming discussion of item 4.5. And with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councilman. Any questions for Mr. Weber? Thank you. Excellent report. Item, someone wish to speak? Item 2.2?
Census
Yeah.
update.
Oh, Ken, where are you? I don't see you, Ken.
Here I am. Can you
Yes,
can you
sir.
see me?
You
Okay.
have the floor, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to have a response to what Mr. Weber said. I think, first of all, he needs to be commended for the work that he's done in the efforts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic that we've been going through. Not only he, the work of Mr. Giese that he mentioned, and actually the whole advisory group, which many of us have been on, has been really very effective. I really like what he talked about with having a locally designed smart testing protocol, one that works in conjunction with state and federal protocols, and the creation of the blue ribbon panel of experts with amazing credentials of the people that we have. It's really unique and I think advantageous to the whole community to follow the protocols I think that Mr. Weber laid out, and to utilize both our current advisory group, the Blue Ribbon Panel, and knowing that we can have an honest assessment of the risks, give our citizens good data to be able to follow, and have great public information. So I know we'll be talking about some of the funding we needed for this, but I think this is one of the most important funding issues that we have coming before us as a part of our recovery, and really want to support the work that he's done.
Thank you, Mr. Vian. Next, we'll go to item 2.2, census update. Mr. Gangler? You're muted.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Brown, members of the council. I have a brief update for you on the census. First of all, we're still working hard with the tools that we have available to us at this point. A couple things of note: we're still really pushing the social media aspect of our message delivery, as well as we were recently able to put several hundred of flyers in the summer sack lunch program. So it's things like that that we're still focusing on, that we can get out and do things without, violating any particular distancing rules or those types of things. And to kind of give you an idea of the numbers, I know we keep focusing on these percentages of the census tracts as to response rates. The last time I checked today, North Dakota as a state is 59.8% self-response rate. Grand Forks came in at 67.5%, which is doing pretty good. And then UND was at 46.1, and the Air Force Base was at 40.5. One thing we need to keep in mind, though, with any of these numbers, these are only self-response counts, either done through the internet, through phone, or through the hard copy. The group quarters are not reflected in these numbers, which will have a bearing, of course, on UND and the Air Force Base. So we're still trying to work with them to make sure we find out when their counts have been completed and some of those things. I don't know if we're going to actually get to have access to those numbers, the group quarters, but we'll keep kind of fighting our way and get the most that we can get. So I would entertain any questions if you have any.
So every person counts, so we must count every person. Any comments or questions? I see none. We're going to move on to item 2.3, proclamation. We have none. Item 3, public hearings and second reading of ordinances. We have none. Item 4, action items. Who would like action items? Pull for discussion. I'll pull 4-0, 4-1, 4-2, and 4-5. Would anyone else like to pull action items for discussion? If not, that leaves.
Can I, Mayor?
Ken?
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd like to have 411, 412, 13, 14, and 15.
So 411, 412, 413, 414, and 415.
Yes.
Okay. So then that leaves 4-3, 4-4, 4-6, 4-7, 4-8, 4-9, 4-10, 4-15, and 4. Oh, you wanted 4-15, and so then 4-16. Need a motion, a second. Mr. Weber motions. Mr. Sandy seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carries. Thank you. Item 4.0. Maureen?
I'll just read it up here.
Okay.
Accept report from canvassing board for the June 2020 election.
Need a motion and a second?
I
Mr.
can-
Weber, or Mr. Weigel motions. Yes, you have more comments, Maureen?
Well, if I could just speak to it just real briefly, Mayor Brown, members of council. So the item that you have before you are the official results of the city election held in conjunction with the primary election that was held on June 9th. The county serves as the official canvassing board, and a copy of the official report has been attached to your agenda item. In order for these to be placed into the permanent record of the city council must pass a motion that approves and directs the filing of the reported canvassing results. So with that, we would just ask that you accept and file the results of the canvassing board.
So we need a motion and a second. Ms. Mock would like to motion, Mr. Weigel would like to second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Thank you. 4.1.
Update on Northern Plains Nitrogen LLP NPN and letter of intent extension.
Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Brown and members of City Council, this evening I should be joined also by Larry Mackey, who's the COO of Northern Plains Nitrogen. He's going to provide an update. This evening we're asking to extend for another 6 months, so from July 1st to the end of December as part of the letter of intent. As you recall at the JDA meeting, Jobs Development Authority meeting, that you did approve moving forward with a plume analysis update. And then also we've had some recent discussions as part of if indeed the NPN project is imminent, it's gotten some funding to move forward, we still need to move forward with further third-party analysis, and that means negotiating some of this wastewater component parts. It means looking at off-site infrastructure. And back, 5-6 years ago, we had estimated that to be about $50 million, so we probably need to update that. Also, as they go through the design, construction, operation, that the city needs to be engaged in all of those phases, whether it's building, construction, whether it's public health and safety measures, those sorts of things. We haven't moved forward with those. Back 5 years ago, you did authorize us to work with Black and Veatch. We did some work preliminarily, and so that if it does continue to move forward, we're going to have a more robust engagement and analysis and third-party review of the project itself as we move forward. So with that, I did ask Larry, and there I see Mr. Mackey himself to provide us an update. Larry's always optimistic, but he's even more optimistic now with what he's hearing from his investment group, and I thought he should give a general update on where he and Northern Plains Nitrogen is at. So with that, Mayor, I'd cede my time to Mr. Mackey.
Mr. Mackey, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I've never been more confident than I am today. I speak to the people that are financing our project pretty well every day, including today. I'm hoping that the next time that that I'm invited to join your meeting, that I can tell you that we are off and running. I don't know what else to say other than that. Because of confidentiality agreements, I can't tell you who I'm working with or we are working with, but they're very credible and very optimistic.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mackey from the group? So we need a motion and a second.
I'll move.
Mr. Weber motions, Mr.
Second.
Sandy. Second, and then Mr. Sandy has comments.
So, Mr. Keelan, we're currently engaging with a study related to the plume. Any idea when that's going to be finished?
Mayor Brown and Council President Sandy, we're still trying to finalize the agreement itself with KLJ. You authorized for us to work with KLJ, so we haven't officially kicked off any meetings yet, but we should be working that over the summer as well as the airport finishes their master plan. So.
And when do you anticipate engaging again with Black and Veatch?
I'm in initial discussions about trying to look at kind of a phased development, what we would do. I would anticipate if, as Larry says, he's in some detailed discussions with an investment group, if and when he gets that word that there's going to be some money invested as moving forward the project. At the same time, I would want to bring that to the Growth Fund and Jobs Development Authority for further discussion. Some of the component parts, like the water and wastewater, I would bring through City Council because that would be water and wastewater related. Some of the economic development portions of it, I would bring through Growth Fund and the JDA. So it'll be a mix and match, but working through Black and Veatch at this point in time.
Great. And so just to comment, Black and Veatch, as part of their previous contract with us, had hired an independent aviation consultant to review plume data analysis to provide a review for the City Council. That work never got completed because it got put on hold, but with the new study that's being done by the Airport Authority, I would suggest that as part of our engagement with Black and Veatch, we re-engage with the person that we already paid a bunch of money to do a study that we never finished. And so I think it would be good to actually finish that for the good of the order.
Yeah. Mayor Browning, City Council President, I agree with that. And I think as we bring through, with Black and Veatch is the umbrella organization. They're going to have many subs underneath them to include what Mr. Sandy discussed right there.
Okay, we have a motion and a second before us. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Next, we go to 4.2.
Reappointment to Airport Authority.
Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Brown, we're asking this evening, I've had communications both with Council President Sandy and also Mayor-elect Boczynski. They're asking you to hold off on this appointment until Mayor-elect Boczynski has an opportunity to speak with Carl Bollingberg, since it is a mayoral appointment. He anticipates having that conversation this week, and that we would be back with this item if we could hold until the City Council meeting of July 6th for a formal appointment.
So we need a
Mayor,
motion.
I'll move to table.
Mr. Sandy motions to table second. Mr. Weigel seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. 4.5 is next, I guess. 4.5,
CARES funding for the City of Grand Forks Health Department.
Director Swanson.
Good evening again, Mayor Brown and members of the City Council. Your staff report has been updated somewhat to include an additional document at the end that outlines the specific areas that the Grand Forks Public Health Department would plan to devote the funding that we are receiving from the North Dakota Department of Health for public health activities. And it's outlined in broad areas such as testing, contact tracing infrastructure, vaccination programs, data and communications, and then reimbursement to the health department for some of the expenses that we've had thus far, which is largely reimbursing grants that have covered costs as well as our overtime. That total does come to the full $1,056,645. We understand this is an incredibly evolving situation and there may need to be some adjustments made along the way, but this is our best estimate at this point in time. We are continuing to get more information and more requests for testing, so it's very possible that we would need additional staff there, but we could probably work within the allocation that has been placed there, as well as we need to replace a lot of supplies. We've used up a lot of PPE for some testing. A lot of masks have gone out to various entities that have requested them, and so we would like to replace those items. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has relative to our proposed funding and the categorical areas to update you. I think this was a request at the last council meeting before the budget amendment was approved. We are getting ready to add to our staff, and so an expeditious decision on the budget amendment would be greatly appreciated so we can complete that process.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Weber?
If I may, thank you, Director Swanson, for that work and for that clarification. I'd like to move approval with the following friendly amendment. On page 2 of the staff report, under analysis and findings and facts, the paragraph ending other costs related to public COVID-19 response, I'd propose adding the following wording: including work in conjunction with City Council to include both public education around best practices and a coordinated testing network based on federal and state guidelines and funding, emergent best practices, and a locally designed and targeted set of smart testing protocols, including serology testing, and other supportive processes that make the best use of local resources as necessary and tailored to address local conditions. Further, that the budget item on page 2 of this report, including salaries, temporary $350,000, be understood to include public education on best practices and necessary support of a blue ribbon panel advising the mayor and council on the testing network.
Is that a motion?
That's his motion for the amendment. Second by Mr. Sandy. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you. 4.11,
Sign appeal for mural located at 316 South 3rd Street.
Mr. Vian.
Yeah, the question I have is, these murals now that they're painted, who is responsible for maintaining the painting of the murals? It'd be for Mr. Gallagher.
I can take that
Mr.
one.
Mr. Gangler. Okay.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
can take that one, Councilman Bean. That responsibility falls to the building owner, the property owner themselves. Similar to our existing sign code, which is where the mural code falls. Maintenance of signs in a safe and clean, clear of debris manner is the responsibility of the property owner. And we get that sign off from the property owner accepting that responsibility as part of our process.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon.
And if I could add to that, it sounds like a pretty interesting process they have where they actually coat the brick, is that right, before they paint it so they don't damage that? Could you explain that?
Absolutely. Yes, so that was the reason this project was coming forward is because there's a provision in existing mural code that original brick of historic structures, you can't paint directly on those, at least without going through an appeal process. So that's where we're at, is in the appeal process for this. So that was done out of a concern for preservation of the brick, historic, unpainted brick. Mr. Chad Kaya with Kaya Painting and Historical Restoration explained to the Planning and Zoning Commission essentially what you've laid out is a clear coat application, a protective clear coat, which he uses actually on the exact same kind of brick throughout town. And I think he listed Reeves Drive area in particular as an area where he applies this clear coat for protection of the brick surfaces fairly often. And then that would serve as a protective barrier, and in fact, he says will preserve the brick better than just leaving it as is. So, and then they obviously apply the paint over top of that.
Okay, well, no, I thought that was pretty unique in the way they did that. So with that, I'd move approval of 411.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Who seconded? Did Maureen get that? Marshall, Ms. Marshall
Yep,
seconded?
got it, Ms. Marshall.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Thank you. 412.
Preliminary approval of ordinance to amend zoning map JRPUD Concept Development Plan Amendment Number 4, located along 44th Avenue South between South 34th Street and South 30th Street.
Mr. Vian.
Okay, just two quick questions on that. We're expanding just those colored lots. Is that right, to have a greater amount of impervious area?
That would be correct, Councilman Bean. This is Ryan Brooks with the Planning Office. That's correct. Those are the lots that are being requested. Those are the lots that are left owned by that developer. So that's why those are the only lots that he's requesting at this time.
What's the difference in impervious area then between the white colored ones, I guess, and then the tan ones?
The other ones would be 35%.
And we're going up to what?
50% with the colored ones.
Okay. And there was some issue then having to make sure that the storm sewer had capacity for the additional impervious area. Has that been done yet?
I believe that's being worked on. And this is.
But there is no answer yet.
No, this is preliminary, and before final, we should have that.
Okay, good. That's my question then. After that, I'd move approval.
So you have a motion. Do we have a second? Ms. Mock seconds. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. 413.
Plat of Prairie's 11th Edition, preliminary approval of ordinance dedicating right-of-way located at 900 block of David Drive, west of Cherry Street, south of 58th Avenue South.
Mr. Vian.
Yeah, again, this is kind of an unusual plat that I've seen where I know it looks like you have a temporary cul-de-sac. Is the intent to extend this, or how long do we envision that this segment would be in place?
Councilmember Veen, that temporary cul-de-sac will go away when David Drive continues to the west and then actually bends to the south. It'll parallel Luann Street as it bends to the south. In this case, that temporary is there for snow removal, vehicles to be able to turn around, as well as fire trucks if that situation ever arose that they would need to get down to that area. It's pretty common for us to put these temporary bulbs in.
So we wouldn't pave that, or would we at this point in time, or how long would we expect this to remain temporary before it's permanent?
What would be permanent would, the bulb would go away, and what I envision is that with the next plat, David Drive will have additional lots that'll be fronting on 80 foot of right-of-way, the same as that current section. So at that time, then that temporary would go away with that next plat.
And what's the timeline you expect the next plat to be here?
I think the developer is he's really pushing for additional lots to come in, and I think they're in conversation right now with the engineering department now on how to best do that. And that may involve that they may be coming again next year with the next set.
Okay, well, that's my questions. With that, I'd make a motion to approve both 413 and 414. 14 is just the annexation, right? And that's preliminary.
So we have a motion on 413, 414. Mr. Weigel seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Thank you. 4:15 then.
Preliminary approval of ordinance to amend zoning map, Gateway Planned Unit Development, PUD, Concept Development Plan located at 4001 Gateway Drive.
Mr. Vian.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and this is maybe something that I've forgotten, but this is called is it a micro development?
It's a micro PUD, Councilmember Veen. So in this case, what they were looking to do was a use that was not allowed within the conventional zone of a B3. They were looking to do residential on the first floor. So in this case, we put it into a micro PUD. It's for the Select Inn along Gateway Drive on the north end, right next to the old Bobcat. And Burger King across from Simplot there. So the hotel itself has been shuttered for a few years now, and it's going to start falling into some pretty bad disrepair soon. And so we are trying to help them, assist them, looking at different uses that can bring some life back to that building. The concept they're looking at is essentially to put some micro units in there, would be similar to an apartment. And try to bring some life back to that area. So there's considerable amount of building code additions that need to be done following this. So that's their next step, provided they get approval for the zoning change.
Just a quick question then. Do we have very many of these micro
PUDs?
Areas in town?
We implemented, I believe Brad put this in, it was just a couple of years ago. I think University Flats was the first one, and I can't remember if we've had another one. If this is the second or third, I can't recall.
Okay. All right, that answers my question. I'd make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Mr. Sandy, and comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. So, Mr. Brooks, I really appreciate all the information tonight. Just for people that are interested in learning more about micro PUDs, when I watched the Planning and Zoning meeting on June 3rd, there was a great discussion about it. I actually went back and rewatched it because it's available on the city's website. And then the meeting minutes came out today, and all of it had good discussion on micro PUDs. So if you're interested in learning about them, there's lots of information online. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second before us. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, carries. Thank you. I need introduction to ordinance on 4.5, 4.12, 4.13, 4.14, 4.15, and 4.16. Mr. Sandy would like to sponsor those. Thank you very much. Item 5, informational items, 5.1.
Mayor Brown, this is Howard.
Oh, Howard, yes, sir.
I believe you missed the introduction of ordinance on 4.4.
Well, maybe I did.
I think you may have inadvertently said 4.5. 4.5 would not necessarily require an ordinance, 4.4 does.
Good eye, Mr. Swanson. So we're changing that to 4.4, 4.12, 4.13, 4.14, 4.15, and 4.16, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Mr. Sandy gives approval. Thank you, sir. Item 5.1.
And that's the investment portfolio summaries of May 31st.
And item 6, approval of the minutes and bills, 6.1.
The vendor list as presented.
Need a motion and a second to pay the bills. Mr. Weigel would like to pay the bills. Ms. Mock seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The bills are paid. Thank you. 6.2.
And the minutes from April 20th, May 4th, and June 8th.
Mr. Sandy motions. Mr. Sandy motions. Do we have a second? Mr. Weigel
Second.
seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Item 7, citizen comments. Maureen, do we have any comments tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay. And item 8, city administrator comments. Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Brown and members of City Council, a few updates. Number one, it's not often I've received a positive comment from the police department police officer, and he wanted to publicly recognize their command staff and all the great work they've been doing through all the all the trials and tribulations that have been going on. And he really said they've been standing out. So I want to give a big shout out to Chief Nelson and Deputy Chief Ferguson and Reamer. And he said all the command staff from all the lieutenants. So I want to make that public, and it really syncs well with your resolution earlier today. So it's always nice to hear positive comments and those that are recognizing their supervisors and what they're doing to help lead them. Also, Rena and I are working on budget meetings, and so it's going to be a tight time frame. And so, starting in July through September, we'll have start having budget meetings. So it'll be a quick turnaround on the budget as we move forward this year, and it generally is that way every 4 years when we get a changeover city council where things will come. So it'll come faster and more furious in July. As we move forward. Also wanted to really give a shout out. You said Councilmember Dockler, and she was really wonderful, Mayor, as you said during that, whether you want to call it a protest or a rally or a walk, she did tremendous work on behalf of you as City Council, and really leading and being a really terrific representative of our City Council. So thank you to her and for representing us all so well. And wanted to highlight next week, Tuesday, June 23rd, we have a meeting at 5:30, and that's to say farewell to Councilmember Marshall and our beloved Mayor Brown, and then to welcome new members, and congratulations, Councilmember Weber, Vian, Weigel, and then our new Councilmember Kavami. So to welcome you along with a new Mayor-elect, Mayor Bochensky. So we're going to try to do it similar to what Council President Sandy has asked, is that we provide, if you want to meet in public, to meet in public. If you want to say some words, sometimes that's best done in public, so we're going to allow that opportunity. And we know there's going to be some requests for a special guest to be here, so we'll try to accommodate all that too, as people are saying goodbye and hello as we move forward. So with that, any questions, and thanks for all that you do, Mayor Brown.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Phelan? Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Next, we go to item 9, Mayor and Council member comments. Councilman Weigel.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Dockler.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Councilman Weber.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then Councilwoman Mock. Councilwoman Marshall. I know we're going to hear from you.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to note that I look forward to being in the council chambers for my last official time next Tuesday night, and I look forward to the opportunity to provide some comments and words of appreciation and thank you to lots of people, and some comments about my time on the City Council. So I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
I look forward to that too, and my personal thank you for serving the community. And Council Vice President Vian, comments?
No, nothing additional.
Council President Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing, I know that you're going to be in council chambers next week, right?
I'll be zooming in so we can have 2 more guests.
I see. So excellent. So I certainly have lots of things and lots of nice things, and some bad things I'd like to say about you.
I hope so.
Just as an aside, in case I don't get to tell you in person, I really appreciate all the mentorship and your friendship. You've been someone that I've really enjoyed working with and for, and you're a true gentleman and statesman for the community of Grand Forks.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
We have a good team. And now it's my turn. We are so proud and more, we're so grateful of what Health Director Debbie Swanson and Michael Doulis have done for the community. Thank you very much. Also, our community was heartbroken with the death of Police Officer Cody Holte, and the community came together, and I appreciate to live in a community that cares. And also on the reaffirmation of our inclusion and welcoming community, I'm so proud that not only could our citizens express their First Amendment rights, but it was done in coordination with our police department and our city officials. And it was, Katie Dockler, thank you for your leadership on this, and you set the tone, and it reflected well on our community, so thank you, thank you, thank you. And members of our community, no matter their background, need to know that their voice, contribution, and their very being here makes us who we are. And also, it's been an honor and a privilege, on a personal note, to protect and serve the community of Grand Forks with the city employees and our first responders. So again, thank you for helping me help you help the community. Thank you very much. With that, we need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Sandy quickly motions. Ms. Mock seconds. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, we stand adjourned. Thank you.